Well, let's see, I reported to the Naval Reserve Air Base, Oakland, which was located on Oakland Airport. It was part of it is still there. It's on the north side of the field. There's still a lot of the old buildings that we used, and there's a small air museum there. I don't know who runs it, Naval Reserve, I guess. And so I reported in. Don't really remember all the details. Signed in, got some uniforms, and got a place to sleep, and we spent the first week or so in indoctrination, and part of our indoctrination, at least part of mine, was I was detailed to mop the floors, or as I was informed, the decks of the student barracks. We were officially in the Navy, sworn in as a seaman second class. And my pay was $36 a month, which I didn't have much of a chance to spend. But one of my first chores was, as I said, was mopping the floors of the barracks. Well, I had quite a bit of experience mopping floors, and first from my mother's instructions on how to mop her kitchen floor, and then later working in a fruit shed at age 15, 16. One of my first jobs was sweeping and mopping those floors, such as you could, because they weren't hardwood floors, they weren't linoleum, they were just planks that were covered with splinters, and anyway, I learned how to mop floors, and I like to think that I mopped those floors better than anybody else. In fact, one of the first few days of doing that in the fruit shed, I came home for dinner one night, and I remember my dad asking me, "How do you like your job?" And I guess I kind of complained that I didn't think too much of mopping floors and cleaning johns. And he says, "Let me tell you something." He says, "You mop those floors and clean those johns better than anybody else ever did." And he said, "I'll guarantee you won't be doing it very long." So I thought about that, and I worked as hard as I could at the fruit sheds to impress my bosses with my floor mopping. And my dad was right. I got moved to, I didn't get paid anymore, but I got moved to a better job. And I remembered that when I got in the Navy. And I scrubbed those decks as best I possibly could. And I think they noticed it too, because in about 2 weeks, when we'd finished all of our indoctrination, and they had divided us into flights, 2 flights, and they named me a flight leader, and I couldn't understand why. There were guys who were older than I was. In fact, almost everybody was older than I was. And they were passed over to be being flight leader, but I was a flight leader. And the job entailed rounding these guys up when they're supposed to be someplace and making sure that everybody got to where they were supposed to be. And this kind of gave me a feeling of authority, and I did my best to earn their faith in me and giving me the job. It would have been a lot easier if I had been one of the roundup E's rather than the roundup-er, but I think it again demonstrated what my dad had told me a few years earlier, that whatever the job is, you do it better than anybody else ever did, and you won't be doing it long. You'll get higher responsibilities. Well, anyway, we were there at Oakland for the first couple of weeks, and then we started flying. We'd fly our airplanes, which were Navy-built N3Ns, biplanes, all painted yellow, and they were taken pretty much from the blueprints of the Stearman, I think they call it the Stearman Cadet. And we had kept them at Oakland. And in the morning, we're divided into 2 wings. And the morning wing, take the airplanes, and they'd fly them out to this little grass strip that we had, the Navy had at Livermore. And we had a big barn there. I guess it was supposed to be a hangar. It looked like a barn to me. And the afternoon wing would stay and go to ground school and at the home base in Oakland. And then at about 11 o'clock or 11:30 or so, pile into 2 or 3 carryalls, and they'd drive us out to Livermore. We'd get off the carryalls, and the morning wing would get on them, and the morning wing would go back to Oakland, and they'd go through ground school like we had done in the morning. And we would take the airplanes and go fly. And that's when we started having more fun than scrubbing decks. So and this procedure went on for about a week, and then we'd swap, and we would become the morning wing, and the afternoon wing, and the first group would become the afternoon wing. And we were only in Oakland for 2 months. We never had any liberty, But we found out early on that if you needed a haircut, you had to go into town to get it. We didn't have a barber on the base, and they would fill up these 2 carryalls with anybody that needed a haircut and drive us down to the Leamington Hotel. And Leamington Hotel had a large barber shop down in the basement, and I would guess they had 18 to 20 barbers in there. And half of us would go into the barber shop, the other half would go into the bar. And when the people all got their haircuts, they'd come up to the bar, and the people that were in the bar would go down and get their haircuts. And when we were all through, of course, the people in the bar were drinking their drinks as fast as they could so they could order another one. And when the guys got all through, the second group got through getting their haircuts, they'd run back up to the bar and finally get one final drink, or the bus drivers would come in and say, "Okay, guys, get on the bus." And usually we got right on the bus, drove back to the base, and we'd wait till next week. Of course, we always told the bartenders, just cut off enough that I have to come back next week. And so every Thursday I got a haircut. And some of the guys didn't get the news about that, but I did right away. And we stayed in Oakland for 2 months, and in that period of time, as I recall, we got 22 hours of flying in. And we left Oakland, and they sent us all to Dallas, NAS Dallas, where we went into a pool, and we didn't do much of anything, but had a little bit of ground school, and we waited to be assigned either to Pensacola or Corpus Christi for regular flight training.
So Diz, we're going to need to break in a second here with part 1 here of the interview, but before we go, I want to do 2 things. One, I want you to kind of tell me just how are you feeling as a young guy getting on these, well, biplanes, I guess, but a great responsibility for a young man. How are you feeling? Confident? And then I'd like to just show you some of these pictures. Maybe I can bring them to you and you can hold them briefly. But yeah, tell us about your feelings as a young man. Heck, how old were you?
Well, I was 20. I turned 21 while I was at Oakland in February, and we left there in March, 1st of March. So I just turned 21 when we left. Having flown, I had accumulated about 80 or 90 hours before I got in the Navy. So I felt, even though this was entirely different type of airplane and different type of flying, I felt quite confident that I could fly the airplane.
Well,
all right.
Now, to me, I would consider this the early days of aviation. I guess it was post-World War I, but still, well, I guess the planes were were they safe then?